The Hawks are back in action tonight in Pittsburgh versus Sidney Crosby and the Penguins. We're going to preview the game, hear from Jeff Flashel, and catch up with our old buddy, Joe Brand, the voice of the Penguins. Join us next on CHGO Blackhawks. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks pregame podcast. We are sponsored by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use our code CHGO365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Hope you're having a great Thursday. Hawks and Penguins drop the puck in about a half hour. We've got a busy pregame show today. We're going to hear from Jeff Flashel, who talked for a long time this morning. And yesterday, we caught up with Joe Brand, formerly the radio voice of the Blackhawks on WGN, the pre- and post-game host. He got full-time gig, play-by-play with the Penguins on the radio. So we're going to get a Penguins preview with Joe. Before we get started, hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube page as well. Let's get right to it. Jeff Flashel met the media earlier today, and here's what he had to say.
When you put Zawaski and Mario together, it stands out because of its size, but did you have any thought that it would be this effective, or how? I guess were you just willing? I know they played together in Rockford too, so there was some experience there. But what have you seen, and what was the thought originally?
Well, we certainly hope that as the year kind of progressed from training camp on, it looked like both guys could be guys that you could use as a shutdown pair. So that was our hope. They're both super long. They both, I think, have the ability to be really good defenders, but both can move a puck good enough. So, sometimes when you're out there against the other team's best, you might be playing with one of our best lines too, so you got to be able to move the puck good enough. And I think they've both, shown, I would say, continued improvement in those areas of having poise and making the right plays. So, this is certainly what we had hoped. It doesn't always, and they, listen, they're still in a learning process and, don't have, crazy amount of games under their belt. And so there's still at times been an up and down to their games, but I think they're headed in the right direction and can be a big factor for us, not only now, but into the future.
Velasquez was saying that he's been asked recently to be more physical and and I guess for tall guys you always assume that's easy, but he was saying it's almost the opposite, where he's used to using his reach and his skating, and it's been kind of taken out of his comfort zone, but he's trying every game to kind of make sure he's bodying something up or just making sure that they feel that he's there.
Yeah, and he's correct. I think sometimes when you see a big guy, you think, it'd be easy to lay the body, stuff like that. But if you really look over the course of time, guys that have that high center of gravity gets harder, and where I think, we've really talked about is more in our net front battles and making sure that we're physical around the net, making sure that we're utilizing the legality of little cross checks, making sure that we're harder in those areas. And he's done a good job of it. I think he's taken that to heart and tried to bring that part of his game. We've tried to bring that part of his game out of him.
How do you think the team has done with those net front battles and boxing out and stuff as time's gone on?
I think better. Obviously, last game we gave up 2, but I think overall better. I think we've done a better job in the last stretch of it. Both those are a little bit, I don't want to say unique. Eriksson X a load for sure, and he does a good job in those areas. We're trying to combo boxing out early, keeping people away from the net, and then almost your technique. And once they do gain body position, it's not necessarily the right thing to just keep pushing them. Sometimes you got to front the puck at that point once they've gained body position. Sometimes you're putting yourself in the right side of a guy. We kind of messed that up a little bit on that last goal, but overall I think better.
What do you I think you caught Pittsburgh? They caught you in the second of back-to-backs coming out of the break, and what are impressions of them, and how would you apply what you learned there to tonight?
Yeah, and that was one of those games where, when you take the emotion out of it, that last Pittsburgh game, really chances were pretty equal. They scored on their chances and we did not. I think they're a good team. I think Dan Mew's done a really good job with their team. I think it looks like a number of their veteran players are having really good years, maybe resurgent years, and credit to the coaching staff and then the individual players for doing that. And I think Sidney Crosby remains one of the best players and best winners in the league, and I've always felt that and continue to feel that. And I think there's depth in the forward lineup, and the last game we played, Manta's line had a real good game against us, and so when you can get that kind of scoring depth, I think it's important. So listen, every night in this league's a hard game. We just went through a stretch of hard games, and we'll continue to have hard games, including tonight.
Before you play Crosby tonight, how do you think the team has overall fared against opposing star players?
That's a game-to-game thing, and the nights when we're playing better, then we fared better. I can say that there's a lot of nights where I think we've done a pretty good job against those guys, and but yet one thing that makes guys star players, like I think of the Toronto game. I think Matthews had done much, and then he scores and gets an assist. Like he just walks out with one-on-one. But that's what great players do. And but listen, we realize how good Crosby is, and we certainly got to play well against him. But they got 19 other guys that we got to worry about too.
The fact that power play has to practice against the league's best penalty kill, is that helpful for them to see that, or maybe tough that it's harder to build confidence when they're so good at it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say, the hard part in the NHL is you don't get enough practice time, so you can't. You're always trying to debate, do you almost use like a mock penalty kill, which is more similar in system to what you're going to see, as opposed to our penalty kill, which is a little bit different than what we're going to see. So, it's something we'll continue to look at. Sometimes I think it's advantageous to kind of put a mock type unit in where it's more just doing their kill, but you also don't want your killers to have work on habits that are opposite of what we want them to do in the game. So that's a balance that you have to have in the NHL. I don't know if it's a positive or a negative going against a real good kill. We had, I think in the end, you got to go out and execute in the game. And, the good thing for our power play last game, I thought we created chances. We just didn't score. Honestly, kind of similar to take the whole game. Like, if you play that game 100 times, you're probably winning it 98 or 99 of them. But you gotta do it on a consistent basis, and so we got to do the same thing with our power play. Like, it created chances, you got to build off it, and you can't take steps backwards. You got to try to have the same results tonight in terms of chances, and then that's eventually they go in.
Would you ever consider?
Islanders used to practice their power play without any penalty killers.
And that's something that there's 5-on-0 routing that teams have done, that we've done. Players now don't seem to like it, but sometimes maybe coaches shouldn't care. You know what I mean? It just depends on how the power play's going. So we'll see.
Would you ever consider 5 forwards like you did with the 4 at the end of that?
If guys are good at those spots, you know what I mean? Like, very rarely do guys play the top in a 5-on-4, so they don't have much experience at it, and so I just have to be convinced it was the best thing for us. I'm not worried about like a bigger propensity to give up shorties. To me, it's not really the point. If you're doing it, you believe in it, and but we don't have anybody right now that I'm like, oh my God, that guy's an unreal top guy. You know what I mean? That would. I thought 4-on-3 is a little bit different, so that's where we went the 4 forwards there.
All right, that's Jeff Flashel, courtesy of the Blackhawks. We thank them for use of the video. And you heard at the end there, he said that he thought the power play looked pretty good. And I actually got here early today, and I went through and looked at 3 of the 5 Hawks power plays. And they actually did get set up a couple times, and they did have a little bit of success. So it wasn't as awful as it felt.
After a minute of zone entry attempts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it wasn't as awful as it felt, but they got to put the puck in the net. Greg and I were talking about that yesterday. Greg's like, here's how you fix the power play. Score. Put a puck in the net. And they had
easy as that.
6 scoring chances in the previous game.
Yeah.
Including, and then they had 6 shots on the overtime power play. At some point, it can be as simple as you need your scorers to score, but getting set up and not wasting a minute to a minute 15 would be really beneficial.
That would
in
also be
regard.
helpful, yeah.
So we'll see. Pittsburgh's got a real good power play, real good penalty kill.
Sixth
Six
best
PK.
PK, and I think third best power play.
That's
so
correct.
special teams is going to be a big factor tonight, especially if the Hawks' power play struggles continue. Hopefully they don't.
Well, I talk about that with Joe Brand. We're going to play that in a moment here, but let's go over the lines real quick. These are confirmed. This is what it will look like tonight. Bedard with Nazar and Teravainen. Moore with Green and Burakovsky. Dickinson, Bertuzzi, Mikheyev, Foligno, Donato, and Doc. So Doc is back in. Landon Slaggert is out. Vlasic, Crevier, Kaiser, Levchinov, Grzelcyk, and Murphy. And Arvid Soderblom gets a start in goal for the Hawks.
Good. I mean, good for Colton Doc to get in. I know that we've kind of been talking about what his future looks like, so give him an opportunity to play, see what he can do. Jeff Blashley, you heard in the pregame talking about, physicality from the defenseman and all that. We know with Doc in the lineup, that brings an extra physical presence. I know he's not a defenseman, but it is someone else out there on the ice that is not afraid to lay a hit or be physical wherever he needs to be. So that could be infectious. If he lays a big hit, the rest of the guys kind of get some juice from that and see where it takes them. But good to see him back in, and that top line untouched as it should be.
Well, the matchup tonight is two teams that everyone predicted to be two of the worst teams in hockey. Neither of them are that.
Yeah,
the Penguins are actually pretty damn good. They just swept a West Coast trip.
Currently in the playoffs,
They're
right?
playing really, really well. Power play good. Penalty kill good. Sidney Crosby, still Sidney Crosby. Evgeny Malkin, still Evgeny Malkin. Let's talk to our buddy Joe Brand, who used to host the Blackhawks pre- and post-game on WGN, was just recently hired as the radio voice of the Penguins. Him and I caught up yesterday, and here is that conversation. We are joined now by the voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins and our old friend, Joe Brand. Joe, how's it going, man? Thanks for doing this.
We're not friends anymore. We're just old friends now.
Well, we've been friends for a long time.
Okay.
That makes us old friends.
I guess we'd be former friends then if we weren't friends anymore.
Right.
So, yeah.
I consider us still friends, unlike Charlie Romeliotis.
Thank you. Glad we aired that out first. Good.
Definitely. For those that don't know, Joe is a Oakland native, graduate of Marist High School. And I think the question on everybody's mind, Joe, is why did you choose Marist over St. Lawrence?
Oh, I mean, the ambiance, the atmosphere, the education, the sports. Do we have enough time? I don't think we do.
No, let's have Chloe delete that. Sure, fine. Whatever. No, the honest question that I think a lot of people have about your Pittsburgh Penguins is why are they good? Why is this working? Because when the season began and we saw all the projections about where teams are going to finish, there were pretty much two consensus at the bottom, and it was the Penguins and it was the Blackhawks. And while the Hawks have been a little better than expected, the Penguins have been way better than expected.
It's one of those things where if you would have told me 3 months ago that the season would look the way it's gone, I wouldn't have believed you. But now where we're at, it all kind of makes sense. But I think when it comes down to it is almost every guy is having a career year right now. So I do think you got to give a lot of credit to Kyle Dubas, the president of hockey operations, because he has hit on a lot of moves heading into this year. Guys like Justin Brazeau, Anthony Mantha, Parker Wotherspoon, all guys that really didn't have homes, I should say teams last season or heading into this upcoming year. And they've completely flourished. And they've also stayed healthy. I think that's a big part of it as well. But even bringing in Artur Shilovs was a great move by the Penguins, who have a lot of faith in their entire goaltending depth, but saw that guy as an opportunity to kind of bulk up the NHL goaltending tandem at the moment. And it's really worked out. Stuart Skinner got off to a slow start after the trade. Since then, since the Christmas break, he's really hit it in stride. But I think the head coach, too, has a lot to deal with it. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a brand new guy in Dan Muse. Obviously, Mike Sullivan will go down as one of the best hockey coaches ever and also in the Penguins franchise history. But sometimes, Kyle Dubas said this right when the two decided to part ways, was that sometimes the team needs a new professor and sometimes sometimes the class needs a new professor and sometimes the professor needs a new class. And in this case, I think it was both. So you just get a breath of fresh air. You get a new message. Everyone seems to be on the same page. The coaching staff all seems to be very cohesive. And I mean, let's face it, when you got a guy like Sidney Crosby leading the team, it doesn't matter what age he is, he's going to put the team in a good position, and that's what he's done.
Well, I mean, that's what I want to talk to you about too. Is Sidney Crosby, 51 games, 27 goals, 30 assists, 57 points. He is ageless, and you got to grow up watching the Dynasty Hawks. You got to cover the Blackhawks for a long time. You know, when you watch Sidney Crosby play, like in your mind, like how does he compare to? I think Jonathan Toews in his prime is probably the most guy. He's probably been compared to him the most, especially when they were both really in their heyday. But for him to continue to be doing what he's doing is just unbelievable.
It's almost adding a whole nother element to his prestige and the conversation that we'll go into whenever he gets into Toronto as a Hockey Hall of Famer as a first ballot entry. But it's funny you bring that up, Jay, because I obviously think about it a lot. I bring it up a lot here too as well. When people ask about my hockey background, I'm like, well, I grew up during the Hawks dynasty, and I would always compare Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane to Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, and I always pictured those two as pretty equal, along with 3 cups for each. But Sidney Crosby's a whole nother level now because of what he's been able to do. Put aside how he's been able to be teammates with Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang for now 20 seasons. The coolest thing about him is how he prepares every single day and how he presents himself every single day. And it makes you understand a little bit more how he's able to stay so consistent because his routine is so consistent, and who he is just a down-to-earth, genuine person that I think just relies on a solid routine, a lot of hard work, and just understands where he's at in his career, but understands where he's at on the ice. The vision he has is just incredible. He doesn't have to work half as hard as everyone else, but sometimes it feels like he is because he just knows the right way to take on a drive to the net. There was this insane goal he had the other day in Edmonton where he's at the top of the rings, like above the hash marks, in the middle of them, and he catches a pretty quick snap pass from his defenseman, Ryan Shea. And he just deflects it from up there and it goes in. I mean, it's 30 feet in front of the net. You see it in real time. You think, oh, okay, just a regular Sidney Crosby goal. But then when you really look at it, he's got to have the wherewithal of where the puck's going to get to him. He's got to have the wherewithal of how to angle his stick so that it can just get on net, let alone past Tristan Jarry. So he's able to do those things a lot. And even when he sets up somebody in front of the net from deep in the corner where it almost looks impossible to make a pass, he's got this wherewithal. He's got this ability to do all of that. And these are all intangibles. You can't quantify them. You can't put them on a stat sheet. But when I get to see him day in and day out accomplish these types of things, you start to understand why he is one of the greatest ever. And it's really cool. I'm really lucky to witness it on a day-to-day basis.
I've heard a lot of older players say, I wish that my body is sort of betraying me at this point in my career, but I'm such a smarter player now. And I wish somehow I could have the athleticism of my youth and the wisdom of at the end of my career. And Crosby still seems to have all the skill he's ever had with that wisdom, with that hockey sense that you're referring to. And he just is unstoppable. It doesn't look like all of a sudden it's going to come crashing down. He's not a guy who is like an opportunistic scorer. He is still creating scoring chances and driving offense and all the things you want to see from a guy you rely on. And you mentioned Evgeny Malkin, over a point per game too. 36 games, 13 goals, 27 assists, 5 points in his last 3. So he's, found the fountain of youth again too. It's just crazy to see how this goes. But as good as they're doing, I think the question that I think about with the Penguins is eventually this is going to end. What is the plan beyond Crosby and Malkin? Or are they just content to say, we are just going to ride this out until they are done, and then when they're done, we will start the rebuild and just suck for a while and figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Dubas is in a very interesting spot. And, I mean, obviously the verdict is still out. We're only in game 52 of the season this year, let alone with the rest of the path. But every move that he's made is somehow, if not benefiting, affecting the long term and the short term. He's walking a really fine line right now. And you look at all the different moves he's made since like last offseason, and they've really seemed to have panned out. And I think a big reason of that is because of the big three. They want to stay together as long as possible. It honestly goes Gino's up after this year, Sid up after the next, Letang up after the next two. I mean, there's a lot of cap flexibility for this team moving forward. The cap continues to go up as well. But everything that Kyle Dubas has put together doesn't really detriment them in the long run. I mean, they still have a handful of picks for the upcoming years. He was able to tweak some things this past year to go from 1 first-round draft pick to 3. And, I mean, one of those guys is one of our better players this year in Ben Kindle, an 18-year-old that people thought he was a stretch to go for, but Kyle Dubas picked him at 11th overall, and it ended up really working. So I don't know, but I also think that, like, I covered this in Chicago, right? It was a full-on rebuild. It was complete tear down. And when I came here last year, I was thinking, okay, maybe that's coming up. Maybe that's approaching. But I don't know. Like, the league evolves. Sports evolve. If every team were to rebuild and try to come back up, not every team is going to win the Stanley Cup. So I feel like Kyle Dubas's plan is very unique, very difficult. It's a tough line to walk, but he's got an interesting spot here in Pittsburgh because, I mean, the fans don't want to see those guys go. And I don't think the players want to leave. And I know that was kind of the case in Chicago as well. But with how long it's lasted now with those three and still producing, it's changing things. And I mean, you don't need to tell me or hear from me that Evgeny Malkin's very outspoken about wanting to play at least another year. I think he wants to finish exactly where Sid and Letang finished. But, another year of him is starting to make a lot more sense now because of what he's been able to do this year. Granted, he missed 15 games with an injury. I think that plays a part. It lightens his load a little bit. But he was producing before that injury as well. So I don't know where the Penguins go from here, but Kyle Dubas has done a pretty good job of being transparent that any move he makes, he does not want to affect the long-term effect of this goal. And the only other thing I'll say is there is a huge benefit of Sidney Crosby in that room for any young player that you bring in. I mean, it's amazing to see how much they light up, how much they absorb, how much they take in. And if you were to go through a rebuild, that's tough on a player. That's tough on a team. That's very draining. You get a guy like Sid there day in and day out where you can still learn from him. You can still pick things up. You'll remember that for the rest of your career, the rest of your life. I think that's very important for any young developmental period for players that you're hoping to be a mainstay in the organization. So I think that's another just reason to hang on to those guys.
Well, it's not just Sid. He's a big part of it. That's for sure. And we talk about this all the time on CHGO Blackhawks, is that special teams can be a great equalizer for teams that are maybe lesser skilled. The Penguins right now have the 3rd ranked power play and the 6th ranked penalty kill. How much in your mind has that, kept them in games, won them games? How big of a difference maker has the special teams been?
Yeah, it's been huge. I don't have the statistic on me anymore, and I think it's a month outdated. But it was something along the lines of, like, the Penguins were the 2nd most profitable team on the power play. And it's kind of hard to quantify, but basically, like, a good majority of their goals, or at least momentum after the power play, was generated from the power play. I will say, though, I feel like their penalty kill is almost more valuable right now. Where are they now? 4th or 5th?
Hockey Reference says 6th.
6th, okay.
83.56, yes.
I thought they were 6th, and then you said the Hawks 6th, so that's where
Hawks are first.
First, okay.
Yes,
Well, and I'll also say that the Pens and the Hawks, I think, are the only 2 teams that are in the top 10 for each. But their penalty kill has been huge because it's been a lot of that 4th line of Connor Dewar, another guy that Kyle Dubas had his eyes on that made sense. Blake Lizotte, who was just signed to an extension for 3 years, just a hardworking, almost Sam Lafferty type. I'm a big Sam Lafferty fan. That's kind of who he reminds me of. But Lizotte's almost taken it to another level now.
He's available.
But
you can have him.
that 4th line of Connor Dewar, Blake Lizotte, and Noel Acciari have honestly been the most consistent line all year long. In fact, they started the game against Chicago back on December 28th. But they've been a big part of the penalty kill. Penalty kill has been great as of late. 24 of their last 25, I believe. That's been just very shut down. And who comes out right after the penalty kill? Sid's line. Who comes right out after the power play's over? That 4th line. So again, it's not just the minutes of a man advantage or shorthanded. It's what comes after it. And I think the momentum that's all gained has just been very contagious and has helped propel them in good spots. Because honestly, if you look at the numbers, Jay, they are, I think, top 4, top 3 now in the power play, but they've only scored in one game over the last week and a half. They scored 3 goals against the Philadelphia Flyers. Other than that, they're like 0 for 19 on the power play. So that has been a little back and forth as well. But for the most part this year, it's been solid.
Well, that sounds familiar because the Hawks are 0 for their last 22 on the power play, and it's making last night they had a 5-1 power play advantage against Minnesota, and ended up losing in a shootout. And that is the difference between a win and a loss is getting. I said if you add 2 power play goals a week, maybe that adds a win a week. And then that adds 2 points a week. And
sure.
it makes such a big difference. So hopefully they can turn it around. Anything else we need to know about the Pens before the puck drops tonight?
Well, I mean, I will say at the moment, Brian Rust is suspended for 3 games. I'll leave my thoughts aside from that. But if there's any sort of shakeup at all, it might be something like that. The Penguins have alternated goalies pretty much all season long. It wasn't until this past week that Dan Muse chose to go with Stuart Skinner against Calgary and not against his former team in Edmonton. The more those days played out, the more that seemed to be like a genius move. So I'm not quite sure who we'll see on Thursday. Also because, we just got back from playing 4 games in 6 days, and now I think we're playing 2 games in 7 days, something along those lines. And also, the last time the Penguins faced the Hawks, they didn't have Connor Bedard and they didn't have Frank Nazar. So I'm excited to see what that matchup will look a little bit like. It was one of the best road trips the Penguins have had in quite some time, sweeping everyone out west. I know the Kraken and Canucks and Flames are where they are in the standings, but still, it's not easy to sweep, let alone a win against a well-rested Edmonton team. So feelings are good right now. I think post-Olympic break will be very telling because we've already talked. It's a little bit of an aging roster. Penguins are going to have at least a game every other day. That's what it averages out to for the month of March. So that'll be interesting. But I'm really excited for the matchup on Thursday, or what day? Tomorrow?
Yes, Thursday is correct.
Wow. Yeah. Obviously bias aside, but really looking forward to what that holds out on the ice for everyone.
And before we let you go, do you expect action one way or the other from the Pens at the deadline?
Yeah, I do. Like you said, one way or another. Everything is good. Like, again, this past trip, every line was buzzing, every pair was buzzing, both goaltenders were, but everyone's healthy right now. So you don't know how that's going to affect things. Jack St. Ivany just went down too, right-handed defenseman who's paired really well with Ryan Shea, but had to deal with hand surgery, so he's going to be out the next at least 8 weeks. So that might make them go get some more depth defensively. They just pulled up a guy from Colorado after Caleb Jones, our buddy, went down as well. So I'd imagine some sort of tinkering. But yeah, and I mean, who knows? Like Stuart Skinner, went to the Stanley Cup final back-to-back years. He's looking great in a Penguins uniform right now. But who knows if Kyle Dubas wants to go another route with him with the pride and the goaltending depth he has right now. I could see a lot of teams in a strong playoff push being curious about his thoughts on where he's at. But again, it's good times in Pittsburgh right now, so I think they want to see how far it can go.
All right, Joe, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the game.
Hey, always a pleasure, Jay.
All right, that's Joe Brand, radio voice of the Penguins. Sidney Crosby, hard to ignore when you're previewing the Penguins.
Guys, shut up about Crosby. Guys, not like he's
glazing Crosby.
Yeah, not like he's one of the best players ever or whatever. Jeez, all this Crosby talk. No, yeah, I mean that's the story. That's the story when you play the Penguins is Sidney Crosby and just
how he just continues to be
wonder.
Great.
Yeah, timeless wonder that he is.
Yeah, he's playing as good as he'd ever played. It's unbelievable.
Hopefully he has an off night tonight.
That would be wonderful. Actually, that was funny that Blashill was asked. You know what? Never mind. Because if I say this, I'm gonna jinx it. So
jinxes aren't real.
I'm gonna.
No, they're not.
All right.
They're not.
I'm going to not say it.
If you say words right now, will that impact the hockey game that is being played in Pittsburgh,
All right, we're
Pennsylvania?
going to find out. Now, this is on you.
Okay.
This is on you if it
Jinxes aren't
happens.
real. I don't care.
Jeff Blashill was asked, like, hey, how do you think you guys have done against star players? I feel like, just in my mind's eye, that the Hawks have done pretty well containing the best players in the league. I don't feel like Nathan McKinnon had huge nights against them, or like it's, or like McDavid lights them up. Like, he might end up with 3 points and a couple secondary assists, but like, I feel like it's always guys getting their first and second goals of the year against the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
And that drives me insane.
It's always who is this guy? He's on this team?
Yeah.
It always feels like that.
I don't know if there's a way to track like player success year by year versus team in like a league-wide list, but look, we have 60 minutes to do it.
Sure.
And we'll talk to you when the game's over. So be with us as soon as the final horn sounds. We'll talk to you then on a CHGO Blackhawks postgame show.
We all silly like the mayor.